welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, and I am solo this week. I just got back from vacation, and as it happens, my recording schedule, and Dak's recording schedule, and Doom's recording schedule, we're all over the place this weekend, so we did not get a chance to get together and record a new episode of the podcast, but fret not, because we do have something very special lined up for you today. What you're going to be listening to today is a previously Patreon exclusive episode of a sub-series that we have for our patrons called ROM Hack Reviews, where I go and play ROM hacks of classic Metroid games. So for this specific episode, you're going to be listening to my impressions of the Super Metroid ROM hack called Super Duper Metroid. And this was the first ROM hack I ever played. Didn't really know what to expect. Had a really good time playing it, fun time playing it, and kind of detailed all my thoughts and review and everything like that in this episode. So I'm excited to share it with all of you guys. Previously, only a handful of our Omega Metroid community had been able to listen to this. And yeah, I'm excited to share it with you guys and see what you guys think. If you enjoy this episode, there are tons of extra ROM hack review episodes available on the Omega Metroid Patreon page, as well as the bonus Spiteri show, where I kind of just talk about whatever, to be honest. I talk about some of my favorite movies, some of my favorite non-Nintendo games, just other stuff like that. So there's lots of other good stuff there. If you are thinking about wanting to support the website and our podcast, that would be much appreciated. But for now, please enjoy this free episode of Metroid ROM hack reviews, and maybe I can inspire some of you to try this game out for yourself as well. We will be back next week with a brand new episode, so don't worry about that. For now, please enjoy ROM hack reviews. Metroid patrons, and welcome to the first edition of Metroid ROM hack reviews. So if you didn't know, this is going to be a solo podcast that I will be producing monthly, and as the name implies, we are going to be focusing on one Metroid ROM hack per month. And we're starting off with something that had caught my eye. I saw a trailer for it, I don't know, maybe a month or two ago, and it just looked absolutely awesome, and that is Super Duper Metroid. And I've never played any Metroid ROM hacks before, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. I have played AM2R, but I guess maybe I don't think that's considered a ROM hack, since that was essentially built from the ground up. And to be honest, I consider AM2R just like an official Metroid game, whereas with this game, it was very clearly like a ROM hack, I guess. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect, if I thought that this would be something akin to AM2R, or if it was gonna be something that was like kind of lame, because I think that like the ROM hacks are kind of all over the place from what I understand, from what I've heard, and it'll be interesting to see, like, reflect on this journey maybe in a year from now, after we've got some games under our belt. But so the ROM hacks, I feel like are widely varied in terms of quality and stuff like that. So I wanted to start with not only a ROM hack that I thought looked really good, but also a ROM hack of my favorite game, which is Super Metroid. And so this is like Super Duper Metroid was quite the experience, and I'm going to detail it. And if you're listening to this as well, I've uploaded all of my playthroughs, so if you really want to get the full shebang, you can go and watch the video of the playthrough, and you can see me play sometimes pretty good, sometimes not so good, and listen to my thoughts as well. So the best way that I would describe this, if any of you guys, I don't know if any of our patrons are familiar with ROM hacks or not, but the best way that I would describe this was it felt like a remix of a song where like you know the song, you know the lyrics, but maybe the beat is changed, maybe the actual tempo is changed, maybe some of it's slowed down, maybe some of it's sped up. So it was like it was the same experience, but just in a completely different way. And the first thing that I noticed about this game is the color actually, and the color palettes for almost everything have been tweaked just slightly so that they look different. And that applies to areas, that applies to enemies, it applies to just environmental everything. The color palette is just a little bit off. And when I say off, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a good way. And this game is I would say that it was certainly geared towards people that had like a familiarity with Super Metroid, if not like advanced Super Metroid players. So because yeah, there were some enemies and there were some items that were in like completely separate different areas, but everything that you saw, like every enemy that you saw, was something that was in Super Metroid. So yeah, I kind of went into this with I don't know, like I wasn't really sure what to expect, and I have a lot of thoughts on this game, and I'm going to go through them here, and I'll lay them out. But I do want to say overall, this was an absolutely fantastic experience. If you are interested in playing this game, I'm not gonna link it. Just I don't know, just in case like the Nintendo police or sniper rifling with people with that. But it is available on MetroidConstruction.com. You could just very easily Google Super Duper Metroid and you could download it. You will need a Super Metroid ROM and you will need an emulator. You can get that in whatever way that you choose to get that. But yeah, this game is definitely geared towards veteran Super Metroid players for sure. And the way that the rooms and the layouts of the rooms were constructed, it was to me it was, I mean, obviously it was a remix of Super Metroid, but in a lot of ways it was also like very NES-troid like, where there was a lot of like really long vertical hallways. There was a lot of like it kind of had like a similar item structure where like you'd have to get an item here, go completely across the map to get the next item, go completely back the other way to get that item as well. And there was a lot of like obstacles that were put in the way so that seasoned Super Metroid players would have a little bit of a tougher time. And like obviously if you're a really good player, you're going to overcome these obstacles fairly easily. But like for example, when you are like in Super Metroid, you can wall jump and then go off the same wall and then up and up and up repeatedly, and you can do that here too. But the way that this game kind of uses it uses like ledges. So for example, there will be a door, and instead of it just you being able to wall jump all the way up and then and then like get to the door, the game knows that you're going to try and do this. So the door will have like a ledge underneath it that's just far enough so that you can't actually wall jump, and then wall jump off the edge of that and then get into the door. And there's a lot of like different things like that in this game, like similar kind of obstacles to prevent people from sequence breaking. Gates are used a lot in this game, whereas like I think in Super Metroid they were used fairly sparingly, and I feel like there was definitely a lot of different gates in this game too that would kind of block progression. So it was definitely built to mind to kind of slow down some of the players that obviously are very good at Super Metroid. But yeah, I guess well let's kind of run through just in general here. I talked about the areas of the game. The color palette is a little bit different for every area, so it does feel fresh. I mean, like you still do have like the jungle area of Brinstar. You still do have like the red swamp area. Meridia looks sandy and watery. Criteria is dark and rocky. So like that in and of itself does look the same, but the way like there's just some like different colored pixels, and maybe it's the enemies and stuff like that really pop for me. But like it's just off by just a little bit, and that kept on striking me how it was like such a small little thing, but it made it look so unique and so like alien almost. So it looked very, very cool. I would say that this game is pretty tough. Both in terms of it's very easy to get stuck, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The items are hidden very well, but also like the enemies are rather they're rather tough. Like you and they scale with you as the game goes on. So like once you get like certain power ups, the space pirates that are in Criteria will get like an upgrade, and they'll be harder to eliminate. So and it does the same thing with like key hunters. It does the same things with Geemers and stuff like that. There's in fact the first area in Criteria you can't even kill the Geemers until you get the grapple beam. So you just kind of have to jump over them and stuff like that. So that's pretty tough. The game also doesn't use energy tanks in the similar way as other Metroid games. When you get an energy tank in this game, you only get half, so you only get 50 health. So that's another thing that makes this game a little bit tough as well. And then, so it's tough from an enemy standpoint, it's tough from an items are hard standpoint, and I would say that it's pretty tough from a navigation standpoint as well, because like I was saying, the game does kind of have some areas where it's just like, all right, we're not going to let you wall jump up the wall, we know what you're up to, but there are other areas where you're like expected to use some of these techniques to just like advance in the game. So if you weren't very good at wall jumping or like timing your running jumps in Super Metroid, you might struggle a bit here. You might struggle a bit. So the item progression in this game kind of starts off in a fashion that you are used to. So you'll begin the game. Probably the first thing that you'll find is the morph ball, which, by the way, actually, I read some reviews for this online, and I haven't confirmed this, but it sounds like perhaps the morph ball might be available at different points in this game. I don't know if that's true, because my experience is that everything was kind of laid out pretty well on the map. But I did hear that. And there is like a secret little Easter egg in this game. It's like the fallen, that fallen soldier right before you go fight Kraid. He's the one that's in Brinstar. He's got all the like little bugs around him. So that guy is in a room in like lower Norfair, and he says something like, "Don't go to Torian without the morph ball." So, hey, thanks for the advice. But so, anyways, back to the point. The item progression kind of starts off the way that you would imagine at the beginning. You get the morph ball, you get the missiles, you get the bombs. And then I got the high jump boots, which were very, very high jump boots. But it kind of starts to deviate a little bit after that, where you get like the X-ray scope, for example, very early, which is fantastic and a godsend. And then you get the charge beam very, very late. And a lot of the bosses drop different items than what they do in the game. So, for example, Kraid will give you an energy tank, and at that point of the game, you very much need either the Varia or the gravity suit. So it's just like, Ridley will give you the screw attack. Golden Chorizo will give you the Varia suit, which is like, you're fighting him in the lower depths of Norfair at that point of the game. So it's very much a needed upgrade. Botwoon will give you the gravity suit, and Fantoon will give you power bombs. Now, there are some bosses that do give you the same item. So you still get the space jump from Dragon, and you still get the bombs from the first Chorizo. But generally speaking, the items are a little bit mixed up after that. So once you kind of get acclimated and you have your basics, like the morph ball, missiles, and bombs, the items start to get a little bit more out of sequence, let's just say. So you can get the speed booster a little bit later than I think you would. I actually didn't get the ice beam was the very last item that I got, and the plasma beam was the item that I got right before that. So I had the spacer beam pretty much the whole game. Power bombs took forever to find, and yeah, so like there's a lot of different ways that you can get items as well in this game, which I do appreciate. So you can go, and if you, like I was kind of talking about earlier, like if you can pull off some of those advanced Super Metroid techniques, I know that you can get the super missiles early. I'm assuming that you can probably get a lot of the other items early, but it was my first playthrough. I was kind of testing it out a little bit, feeling it out a little bit. There's no map stations, At least none that I found. So navigating can be a little bit tricky at times. And I dare say maybe a little bit frustrating at times as well. Because this, I would say that this is actually the biggest issue of the game, which is the pacing and progression. And what I mean by that is like, it reminded me of playing Super Metroid for the first time, but like not in a good way. And maybe that's because like I like to think that I'm a pretty good Super Metroid player, and I was frustrated. I was just like, where the hell do I go? And maybe that's because I was still kind of playing the game by Super Metroid's rules, and I'll get to that in a second of how I broke that and finally had a breakthrough. But the pacing is just a little bit, it's a little bit off. And like I said, it's kind of Nestroid-ish, where like in Nestroid, for example, you go into that game, you go and get the first missile, and you have to backtrack all the way, like back up the first tunnel, and you get the long beam. And then you have to go like way the hell across the map, and you get the morph ball bombs. And then you got to go down to Norfair, and then back up to Brinstar, and then down to Norfair, and then back. You're kind of all over the place in that game. And it's kind of the same way in this game as well, which would be fine, but there's not really any navigational hints or cues that kind of point you where to go. And I guess that you could say that like Super Metroid doesn't really have that either. And I think that would be a fair point to make. But also like Super Metroid is a 30-year-old game almost at this point. And maybe it's just because I've played that game so much, but I just never had that problem playing Super Metroid. So you're going to get lost playing this game. And I would say that there are some points where the pacing will grind to a halt. And this feels particularly bad after playing Metroid Dread, which the pacing of that game was so crisp and so smooth for a Metroidvania, where like you would kind of get one item and then it would flow right into the next. Like you'd get the you would get the speed boost, and then you could immediately use it and go up Dairon and then take the yellow transporter, and then that would take you to the next area that you need to go. And then once you got the gravity suit, you go back to Gavrin. Like that game really kind of kept you moving and offered you a couple different shortcuts to kind of get your pacing here. And I'm probably going to do this a bunch of different times, so I might as well just get this disclaimer out of the way right now. Obviously, there's a big difference between a game like Metroid Dread or Super Metroid, which has a giant dedicated team of trained developers and paid professionals that are working on this game in collaboration, whereas Super Duper Metroid is a passion project made by amazingly talented people, amazingly talented fans. So it's obviously not fair to to try and compare the assets that went into Metroid Dread versus the assets that go into Super Duper Metroid. But I do think that it's worth bringing up anyways, because I feel like for me, I was just like kind of like, oh, where the hell do I go now? Like I've got this, I finally got the super missiles, but like what good did it do me? And there's no areas that I can actually use this item, where I do feel like in other games in the Metroid series, you do like you get that item and you kind of have a good idea of where you need to go to to maximize that item. So I think that this could probably use a little bit of work here, and I would say that that's probably my biggest criticism of Metroid Dread, as well as I would say that the map is kind of the criticism of Metroid, my biggest criticism of Metroid Dread, or Metroid Dread, Super Duper Metroid. Sorry, I'm new to this. Give me a break. Also, I think I said it on my other episode, but solo podcasts are weird. You kind of gotta talk on, and there's no one to pick up your slack. But yeah, so that's probably the pacing and progression is probably my biggest criticism of Super Duper Metroid, but it is not helped by the map. And the way that the map is presented is kind of frustrating. First of all, if you're a completionist like I am, and you want to go for all the different items, the way that the items are listed on the map, everything is just a dot, which is kind of frustrating because, like, from Metroid Fusion on, we would have the circles indicating that there is a hidden item somewhere in this grid, or in this tile on the grid. And whereas in Super Metroid, or Super Duper Metroid rather, you just have a dot and it's like, all right, like, did I get this expansion? Did I not get this expansion? I mean, as we know, a lot of Metroid's secret sauce is kind of seeing something and realizing that you can't get it right away, and then marking it and coming back later to get it. So it's a little bit tougher with Super Duper Metroid because it doesn't follow that kind of progression that the Metroid series made after Super Metroid. And the map. My other criticism about the map as well is it follows Super Metroid's path in that you can only see the map for the area that you're in. Now, I will give Super Metroid a pass because that's a 30-year-old game, but Super Duper Metroid, I mean, like, I think that would have been pretty easy to implement, like a world map, so you can easily switch between seeing Meridia or Norfair or the wreck ship or whatever. And the fact that you have to go, like, if I'm in Meridia and I want to see, the map for the wreck ship, and I have to trek my ass all the way across the map to do that, I feel like it's a missed opportunity and just a little bit of a letdown. And like I said, like, I don't think it's fair to compare a fan-made game, to a studio production made by Nintendo, one of the best, if not the best, video game developers in the world. But I think at the same time, like, the map of Super Duper Metroid does add in some quality of life improvements. Like, you can look at a map and you can see, like, the items that are in the area. So you can see, like, okay, I have 3 of the 4 super missile expansions, or like there's another reserve tank in here or something. And I feel like if you can do that, it would have been probably easy enough to, like, switch between, Criteria, Wreck Ship, Norfair, Brinstar, Meridia. I feel like that probably could have and should have been implemented, and it would have made navigating a lot easier. Because I think that in general, navigation is the biggest flaw of this game. Even though movement itself, I would say, is very crisp and feels very nice, but just navigating, the pacing and progression, the way that you have to use your items is, it's a little bit. It's a little bit frustrating, and maybe that's just because like I said, like, I'm a good Super Metroid player, or at least I like to think I am, and I was just like, I feel like I should be progressing. I feel like I should be progressing, but I'm grinding, and I'm back here, I'm back there, I'm going nowhere, and so I was just like, all right, like, let's get the ship on the road here. But my other thing too is that I think that I was, like I said, I was still playing by the rules of Super Metroid. And so when I kind of started to deviate a little bit from that is when this game really kind of kicked into gear for me. And so the point, I had a breakthrough when I was stuck, couldn't figure out where the hell to go. I had the missiles. I had super missiles. I did not have power bombs. I did not have the speed boost. I didn't have the space jump. I didn't have the ice beam. I didn't have any. I didn't have, like, any of the good stuff that you really need to kind of peel back the layers of Zebes and really explore the nitty bitty grits. And one thing that I did not have is the Varia suit. And actually, funny enough, I had gotten the gravity suit before I got the Varia suit, and so I was just like, well, what the hell's going on? Like, I can go into this red acid in Norfair, but I can't go into these heated areas. And eventually my breakthrough was like, you know what? I'm just going in these heated areas, like, whatever. If I die, I die. I want to explore some other places. Maybe I can get something that I shouldn't be able to get. And I think that that's actually the way that the game intended you to play. So I went into Lower Norfair. I ran around as fast as I could, and I had the gravity suit, so the damage I was taking lowered by a little bit from the heat. But eventually I found the speed boost, and it was way, way, way down. Kind of think like on the regular Super Metroid map where the statue of Ridley is that has all of the Zenos poking out, and you can go and get an energy tank below one. So kind of in that area of the Norfair map, I finally got the speed boost, and I was like, oh my god, yes. And so I finally was able to get to the wreck ship. I finally was able to get power bombs. I finally was able to get the space jump. And from there, then things really kind of started falling into place, and I was having a lot more fun just, free flowing around the map, if you will. So, I don't know if I was intended to do that or not. I do know that, facing Golden Chorizo was so the bosses for me were in a similar sequence to how they played out in Super Metroid 2. So you had the Chorizo first, and then Crocomire, and then Kraid. Botwoon was a little bit earlier, but so I do know, and my point is to make that. So when I got to Golden Chorizo, he's the second last boss of the game, or actually, I guess the third last boss of the game. So at the point that you face him in Super Metroid, you're getting the screw attack, which is basically your final upgrade. So the point that I was facing him in Super Duper Metroid, I was getting the Various suit. So it was like one of my very last upgrades that I absolutely needed. So I do think that the game intended for you to just brave the elements, and maybe that's why you get the gravity suit early. Maybe I don't know if there could have been something that maybe gave you a heads up for that, because I don't know. I probably wasted an hour and a half, maybe almost 2 hours, just kind of thinking that, like, all right, there's got to be something I'm missing. The Various suit has to be somewhere. So maybe it could have made that a little bit more clear, maybe not. Either way, once I got to that point, it was free flowing, and it was awesome. So that was my breakthrough. That's my biggest criticism of this game. So if you're going to play this game, get ready for that. The map is a little bit frustrating. You will get a little bit lost. But don't do what I did and just go and venture into the heated areas. And you'll have a good time. All right. So I made a bunch of notes here. So I kind of want to just talk about a lot of things individually, and I'm going to try and group them together as well as I could. So we'll talk about some gameplay elements. Then we'll talk about some items. Then we'll talk about the bosses. And then we can talk about any other stuff that is at the end. But so in the trailer for Super Duper Metroid, one of the things that kind of sold me was there was this sequence where you're in Samus's ship, and it's like you're playing Star Fox, like you're shooting asteroids, you're barreling towards ZDR. It looked really cool, and it actually was really cool. But this was like a mini game at best, so you only play it for about, I don't know, 20 seconds, maybe at the beginning of the game. And there's no real, there's no real consequence if you don't hit any asteroids. You basically, it's almost like when you've beaten Super Smash Bros. Melee and you're just like shooting the credits. Like, you can do it and it's fun, but you also don't really have to. And so that was kind of the space shooting game here. I thought that it might come back at the end, as maybe Samus is trying to escape Zebes, as like the planet was blowing up, or maybe you'd have to shoot some debris. But it didn't. But it was fun for while it lasted. So it was kind of a cool little gimmick. And just even seeing that, I was just like, oh man, I wish that'd be so cool just to see in like an actual Metroid game. And like, why is Super Duper Metroid like the first Metroid game I can think of where you're controlling like Samus's ship, not in the way that Corruption did it, but like you're actually in that ship and you're shooting stuff. And I was like, this is awesome. And obviously I'm not the only one that feels like that should be a no-brainer for the next Metroid game. But yeah, it was cool, but it didn't really last long enough, which is too bad. Definitely a couple differences once you get to the actual planet and start your game. So first of all, you basically completely skip the Ceres space station parts. And in fact, you essentially skip the entire story of this game. There's no baby Metroid parts at all. Not in the final boss fight, not in Torian, nothing like that. So it's really just like action. And with a game like this, that's probably geared towards like advanced Super Metroid players who probably don't want to deal with that. That's probably fine. But I kind of missed my buddy, the little baby Metroid, aka the Super Metroid. So it was a little bit. It was too bad, but that was okay. I had written down a note, and I was like, I kind of miss the item jingle. Like the do 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 when you get something. Because the default to this game is like you get it, it pops up, and it's like you've got a missile expansion, and then it kind of goes away. And obviously this is put in place for with speedrunners in mind. And then I realized that you can actually go to your options screen, and there is like a ton of different options here. So there was the option to turn the item jingle on, turn the item jingle off. There's like a ton of like just options for like VFX options for like beams and stuff like that. You can see the particles of the beams. You can see like all these different things for the beams and the way that they are presented. There is this one is really cool actually. You can change the speed of the morph ball bombs, so you can change them to like a regular cadence when they go off, or you can set it to like fast morph ball bombs. And basically what that means is like you can cheese the morph ball jump. So I probably could have turned that on while I was stuck and like climbed up to the wrecked ship. But I didn't, because I didn't want to do that, because I figured I'm a good Metroid player. I can figure out the solution. But that was a really cool option, I thought. And the one that really stuck out to me, which I thought was very cool, is you can change the like the HUD basically. Although it's not really much of a HUD, but like the way that you see the items at the top of the screen, like your missiles and your energy tanks and stuff like that. So there's a ton of different options. There's like the Super Duper Metroid option, which I basically just ran with the whole time. But there's like the classic Super Metroid option. There is the Nestroid option. There's a speedrunner option where you can see like your button inputs and stuff like that. There's a Metroid Prime version, which looks really cool. It's just like little stuff like that. I thought was very fun. So I turned my item jingle back on, and then I realized why it was turned off, because eventually I was just like, I just want to play. So yeah, there was lots of different options and lots of like really cool attention to detail stuff that was put in there. No option to change your map though. I will say that. I was looking through and I was like, maybe there is a map option that gives us like a classic map and like a zero mission-esque map that has the circles instead of the dots, but that was not there. But yeah, that was very cool. A few quick things to note here is that the save stations both refill health and are just like part of the room. That was another option, by the way, that you could have in the options, is to have save stations either just like auto refill your health or auto save or whatever like that as soon as you walked into them, without actually having to like click save, which was, I mean, as easy and as lame as that sounds, like it was like, this is fantastic. Why was this not, in place 30 years ago? So that was great. There's a lot of little things in the options that are just like so nice to have in there, that you wouldn't think of, but that can really kind of improve your experience, improve the flow of the game. But the other thing about save stations in this game is actually they're kind of like the save stations in Samus Returns, where like those save stations don't have a designated room. They're just like part of the room. Now some save stations do. There are some like classic save station rooms, but a lot of them are, they're just like in the bottom right corner of like a big room in Meridia or something like that. So I kind of like that. I kind of like that it's like, a little bit versatile like that. So yeah, like I mentioned earlier, energy tanks only refill 50 of your health, which is a nice little challenge. The high jump boots in this game, holy crap, do they jump high? These things jump like ridiculously high, and I think I know the reason why, and that's because the game encourages you to explore Meridia for a while before you actually get the gravity suit. If you thought that you got the gravity suit too late in Metroid Dread, you're probably going to feel the same thing in Super Duper Metroid, because you get the gravity suit a little bit later, and you get it in Meridia. So you're going to have to go through and, wade through the water before you can get that. But because of these like really jumping high boots, moving through water wasn't really that bad, actually. And maybe it's because I in general don't mind the moving through water without the gravity suit. I think it's kind of like a different puzzle almost into itself, like trying to maneuver Samus the right way, doing a lot of the wall jumps and stuff like that and perfecting your jumps. But you're going to be moving through water a lot, and the high jump boots I felt like really made that a lot easier. A couple other item notes here. The space jump feels way easier. This feels like the Metroid Dread or the Metroid Fusion space jump, where it's like you can very clearly just click jump, and Samus will jump, where the space jump Whereas like Super Metroid Space Jump, I feel like can be a bit finicky at times, where like you can click jump, but sometimes you might just fall, and like sometimes you have to do like that little a little circular motion, like the little pigtail or whatever, to go up and get your jump the way that you wanted to. So it was nice to kind of see that the space jump was fixed in this game. One thing that was rocking in Super Duper Metroid was the speed booster. Now, I actually kind of anticipated that based on the trailer that I watched, that there might be some more like speed boosting puzzles, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the way that the speed booster moves in this game is awesome. It's very Metroid Dread-esque, and actually I don't know if this came out. I think this came out just after Metroid Dread, if not just before. But I think that clearly maybe the developers of Super Duper Metroid had an eye on what Metroid Dread's speed boost was doing, because there was a lot of similarities. And the biggest one is that the way that you can maintain momentum with the speed boost. So you can charge up your speed boost, and you can just first of all, you can just go. You can choose to hold dash if you want, but if you just start running long enough, you will start to speed boost. And there's an option as well to have the short charge on, which is very, very cool. But yeah, so you can start running, and then if you jump, it will carry your speed boost, and then you can space jump with that and kind of space jump into infinity, and you'll still be charged with the shine spark. So that's a pretty cool technique if you're let's say that you want to speed boost and then jump, and then like you're kind of floating around with your space jump, and you can take out like a bunch of really high powered space pirates that way. It's a pretty cool technique. And what else is very cool is that once you get the spring ball is hidden way the hell down in Meridia, but once you get it, you can actually speed boost in morph ball form. So you can be a morph ball and start moving, and it'll automatically go in morph ball. It was very cool. There's a couple different puzzles and stuff like that are involved in the game, where like gates are kind of coming down in a morph ball tunnel, and like you could use your morph ball to just plow right through them, and it's speed boosting. Very cool stuff. And again, kind of one of those things I was like, this is awesome. Like this should be in a Metroid game. This is very cool. So yeah, the items I thought were very good. The X-ray scope, I mentioned that you get it earlier in the game, which was very, very useful because I was using that a lot to find where the heck I needed to go. And like I mentioned, the ice beam was the last item that I got, and so I was kind of thinking to myself too, because items are kind of pitter-pattered all over this game, and I didn't have it going into Torian, and I was pretty sure that I had explored everywhere. So I was like, all right, maybe I need to go into Torian. Maybe I need to just avoid the Metroids, or like maybe I can take on the Metroids without the ice beam. So I was very quickly punished for my arrogance. The Metroids just sucked the life out of me immediately in Torian. So I did go back and I found the ice beam, and that was the last upgrade that I found. But yeah, I haven't 100% of the game yet in terms of items, but I plan on going back and sweeping the board. One thing that I will say, and I kind of mentioned it earlier too, just based on the trailer, I was expecting some crazy shine spark puzzles, because there's a few, but there's not like a ton. Not in the way that obviously Metroid Dread I think is like the king of that, but even in the way that like Zero Mission or Fusion kind of present some of the harder shine spark puzzles in those games. I don't think that there's anything like that I've come across in this game, which makes sense because I don't think that there was anything like that in Super Metroid either. There were some expansions that you did need to have like pretty specific shine sparks for, like the one in the first room in Meridia comes to mind, where you have to shine spark all the way up and get that one missile expansion. But I think, like, generally speaking, for Super Metroid, that game like requires the way that you find expansions in Super Metroid is more about like knowledge. So like knowledge of the map and knowledge of how to use your abilities versus like I think like Dread and Zero Mission and Fusion are more about like skill, like you obviously know how to use your Shine Spark in that game, but like are you skilled enough to use it in the right way to get these expansions? So I think that Super Duper Metroid kind of follows Super Metroid's path, and that it it really makes you, it rewards you for knowledge. So if you are just like, okay, I know that there's probably something up there, I just don't know how to get it. But if I use my skills this way, I might have a chance of getting it. It rewards you for that. And it also rewards you too for speaking the Metroid language. And if you're going to 100% this game, you absolutely have to speak the Metroid language. And even to get the amount of items that I got, you have to speak that language. And what I mean by that is like, like when you're playing Metroid and you just see something, you're like, this hallway's too long for there not to be something here. Or like, this is a suspicious looking, like I feel like the reward at the end of this long hallway wasn't good enough. And maybe I should x-ray scope it and see if there's a hidden tunnel or something like that. Kind of like when you're playing like a Zelda game and you're just like, this wall looks sus, I bet you it can be bombed or something like that. That's kind of what I mean by you have to speak the Metroid language. And you absolutely have to speak that language. I think both in Super Metroid and in Super Duper Metroid. So Metroid Dread, like I said, I think that's more about skill, the way that you use the items that you have, where Super Metroid I think is about like knowledge, about knowing how and when to use your items. I'm not sure if any of that made sense, but that's the way I feel, and that was the way I was trying to articulate this. So before we move on to talk about bosses, I want to talk about music really quick. So there weren't any like new music tracks added, which was too bad. But I mean, I totally get it, right? Like I totally get it. But like I said at the very top, I wasn't sure really what to expect with like a ROM hack, so I didn't know if like that was a thing. Like people made new music tracks, but I remember playing AM2R, which I like. I mean, Jesus, that game has like one of the best soundtracks of the series, and it's not even an official Metroid game. So I was kind of like, oh, that'd be badass if there was like a remix of Green Brinstar or Meridia, and there's not. But also, I'm not going to complain about hearing the Super Metroid soundtrack. One other thing that I absolutely popped off for is all the animal buddies are here. And they're doing their thing, and they're looking good. So the Edacoons are here. The Decora's here. He's running. He's jumping. The Turtle Mama is in Meridia, and she looks good. And actually, her area is somewhere that you need to go to progress. So it helped to pay her a visit. I have not found Shack Tool yet. But I have to imagine that my man is somewhere on the map. Like I said, I haven't 100% of the game yet, but pretty much everything else from Super Metroid is here. So Shack Tool's got to be hiding around somewhere. I mean, I'm assuming he's got to be in Meridia, but maybe he's not. I don't know. But yeah, let's talk about these bosses here for a second. I was kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I was playing this game, and I got to the Chozo statue that had the bombs, and I was like completely caught off guard that a Chorizo came up and started fighting me when I was getting my Morph Ball bombs. Even though I played Super Metroid a million times, I was just like, oh, this is it's a ROM hack. You know, he's not gonna get up. It's just a Chozo statue. And by the way, there's Chozo statues everywhere in this game. They look kind of cool. They're just built into the background, like there'll be some on save stations. There's like some that are backwards and upside down. But yeah, Chorizo was there. I would say that for the most part, the boss fights were mostly the same, but with a few differences. Spore Spawn is a bit different. The fight in and of itself is the same, but what's different is that the room has changed, so you can't hide in the corner. In the Spore Spawn boss fight in Super Metroid, you can hide in that one corner and like he can, he'll just bob around and do his thing, but he won't actually hit you. Whereas in Super Duper Metroid, there's no safe spot, so like you kind of got to be moving around, or else he's gonna bonk you. The Crocomire fight was the same, but my boy was green, which I don't know, I loved. I thought that was so good. I thought that you might fight a skeleton or something like that, but no, it's the same thing. Poor guy just is boiled alive. The Kraid fight, the Dragon fight, and the Ridley fight were basically the same. There were no changes other than slightly different room layout, but not really that different. The electrical socket was on the opposite side on the Dragon room, so I let him pick me up, and he just pulverized me with that attack, and then I finally got him on the right side there. But the Ridley room is a little bit different, but not much. The same basic idea. It's a long vertical room. And the Grade Fight 2 was a little bit different. Or the room was a little bit different, but the fight was mostly the same. The bot wound fight was the same fight, but the room was so different that it kind of changed the way that you fight. There were only, I want to say that there were only like 4 holes in the bot wound room. This one, but it was a much smaller room. And the original room was small, but this room was even smaller. So like he could have appeared at any point and hit you. I would say that the biggest difference in terms of boss fights was actually Fantoon, because with Fantoon you could hit him at any point, whereas in the regular fight you kind of have to wait for him to like phase into reality or whatever, and you have to kind of pick your moments. Same thing, you can't hit him with a super missile or he will go berserk, but you can pound off like a bunch of different missiles. He kind of looks like he's like phased out of reality, so at first I wasn't firing, but then I was like, all right, well, this guy's been out of like reality for like forever. I'm just gonna fire a missile and see what happens. And it hit him. It kind of stopped him and slowed his momentum a little bit. So that fight was probably the most different of them all. I will say the Golden Chorizo fight was insane. That fight was bonkers. So I fought him very late in the game, and kind of like in the main game progression, I was fighting him right before I got to Ridley. But yeah, I mean. Super missiles are useless against the Chorizo. So I was using regular missiles, which are, I mean, they might as well be useless. And like I mentioned earlier, I didn't have the plasma, I didn't have the ice beam. So I was like, oh my god, this guy is just a lunatic. Like, he was so insane. This was the toughest boss fight of the entire game for me, actually. It was so hard. Like, this guy was whipping my ass for, I think I died to him 3 times before I finally got it together and put him away. Generally speaking, like I mentioned earlier too, like everything hits a little bit harder in this game, so he was just laying the smack down. So I got to tip my hat to Golden Chorizo. He was the toughest enemy that I fought in the entire game. But yeah, so respect to my man. The Mother Brain fight was actually kind of lame. That I'll criticize that as well. I didn't like the last Mother Brain fight. So like I mentioned, there's no story. So like, you go into Torian, and Torian itself is actually pretty awesome because it's like, kind of, again, it's similar but dissimilar. The Metroids look a little bit different. They actually look like the logo that we used for Omega Metroid. They were like red and green, but there were also like mini Metroids in Torian too, which was cool. Torian was much longer than like the area was much bigger than it was in Super Metroid. But yeah, by the time that you get to Mother Brain, you don't have to go through like the room with all the Zebatites and the Rinkas and stuff like that. You pretty much you finally get to Mother Brain, and then you go up, and you kind of, there are Rinkas shooting at you, but there's no Zebatites. You basically just get right beside her, destroy the tank, and actually that's it. There's no second part of that fight like you would expect. So I thought that was a little bit anticlimactic, actually, because there was no Super Metroid action there. There was no the ending Mother Brain fight. I was thinking that, like, I think you could probably do that fight with skipping the the part where the baby Metroid comes in and sucks the life out of her, but maybe they didn't find a way to do that. I'm not sure, but so yeah, it ended very abruptly, actually. The escape sequence was very cool. A really fun escape sequence. I maybe dare say I even say better than Super Metroid's, but yeah, that was pretty cool. But it did kind of end abruptly, so I was just like, oh, okay. But yeah, so that was the bosses of the game. I mentioned earlier, all the areas were very cool. Like I said, it's like a remix of a song. I think maybe I'll give a special mention to the wrecked ship. I think that was maybe the coolest area. The colors of the wrecked ship when it was off looked just like so ominous and stuff like that. There was a bunch of like different entrances to the wreck ship too. Like, I mean, obviously they were all in Criteria, but like at different points in Criteria, and just I don't know. I thought that it was very cool, the way that the wreck ship in particular looked and was integrated into the map. And I think that Torian did a really good job too, because I feel like that area can be a little bit boring, but it was kind of a creepy blue aesthetic. It almost looked like Sarah Space Station actually. Yeah, it was very, very cool. So yeah, that was my playthrough of the game. There is a mirror mode, which is cool, and a randomizer mode as well. I would, when I was playing this game though, I was just like damn, this almost feels like it is a random, like this feels like randomizer mode to me already, since all these items that I didn't know are all over the place, and like, I was still playing by the rules of Super Metroid, so I was like, all right, well, like, I feel like I shouldn't have to go into the heated area of Norfair to get the Varia suit, but here I am anyways. But yeah, so that option is definitely available as well. I would say, oh, and one other thing too, I don't know if there's a version of save or kill the animals at the end of this game, but I feel like there probably is, and I feel like I probably just missed it. So I'm gonna do this game again. I'm gonna finish this game again and beat Mother Brain in that kind of anticlimactic fight. I'm gonna beat Mother Brain, and I'm going to see if I can explore around, and if I can go and rescue my animal buddies, because I'm ashamed to admit, but I left them. I left them on Zebes to die. So I'm gonna try and have to write that wrong. But yeah, I would say that overall this was my first ROM hack like ever. This was I was really, really, really impressed. I really was, and I don't know if all ROM hacks are like this high in quality, but this one was like really, really awesome, and I had a really good time doing it. It was a bit frustrating at times because of the lack of flow, but I do wonder how much of that was kind of me adjusting to the rules of this game, and maybe realizing that the rules of this ROM hack were not quite the same as what they would be playing a regular official Metroid game. So yeah, I think that if you could play it, you should absolutely go out of your way to play it. This, like I said, you need a Super Metroid ROM, and you need an emulator to do it. It's available on Metroid Construction. The creators of this game are Metaquarius and Daltone. So these guys really put something outstanding together. My final score, 6 hours and 23 minutes and 81% item completion. So there we go. Yeah, that was the first ROM hack I ever played, and this was the first episode of ROM hack reviews. So I would love your guys' feedback. It's a feeling out process. Let me know like what you liked about this. Maybe some other things we could do in future. Like I said, there's going to be video and stuff like that that you can watch the playthrough of. I didn't want to stream it to Twitch just because I didn't want. No, I feel like I didn't want to give everyone something that all the patrons of Omega Metroid have signed up for. So you can definitely check out that gameplay of Super Duper Metroid. I'm thinking that maybe the next game that we play is Metroid Rogue Dawn. So I'm going to put that as the next game that we do. But if you guys have anything different that you want, let me know instead, and we can do that. But yeah, this was it. This was a fun time, and it's like I said, it's always an adjustment doing solo podcasts. But man, once we got going about Super Duper Metroid, I was very excited to talk about this game. I had a lot of thoughts as someone that loves Metroid, Super Metroid dearly. So this was very cool. It reminded me a lot of playing Super Metroid for the first time, and I think that if you guys have not played this game, which I gotta assume is everyone, I think this might be up your alley. I think it's gonna be a good time for you. So yeah, check it out. And I just want to say again, thank you so much to you guys for supporting Omega Metroid. This is the the first show of the Omega tier that we've released, and I'm just so grateful the way that the last month has went and shaped up, and it's been an awesome experience. So I'm hoping that you guys really dug this episode. I'm hoping that you dig the playthroughs. Like I said, if you want to tweak anything, let me know. If you have suggestions, let me know. If there's like a hack that you are like super passionate about, hey, maybe you just like come and do this with me for a show or whatever. Let's talk about it in the Discord channel, the patron-only Discord channel. Until then, I'm gonna get out of here. Check out Super Duper Metroid. Thank you for supporting Omega Metroid, and we will see you next mission. Take care.
I've been looking everywhere for you. Hyrule is under attack. What are you doing?
Well, excuse me, Princess. I've been listening to Virtual Theater's episodes all about the Legend of Zelda cartoon. They're both hilarious and insightful.
Okay, Link, I guess you're off the hook. I've heard that Virtual Theater is a podcast that only covers video game news. Why haven't I seen this episode released yet?
Because this is a Patreon exclusive set of 13 episodes. This is only being released to patrons, along with other great bonus content.
Well, don't just dilly-dally, Link. I know of all the great episodes available for free over at soundcloud.com/virtual theater. But tell me where I can sign up to get these bonus episodes.
Over at patreon.com/virtual theater, of course. You know, Princess, I think all this info deserves a kiss.
Not a chance, Link. I gotta go get those Legend of Zelda cartoon exclusive episodes. I'll see you later.
Well,